Good day, everyone. This is a lecture feedback on Module 2, Principles of Drug Action. And we're already done with objectives number 1 to 3. We've already discussed about the drug administration and pharmacokinetics. So we're explaining here in this PowerPoint video objective number 4, which is on pharmacodynamic principles and pharmacogenetics. Pharmacodynamics, as we've learned, is what the what the drug does to the body. In this lecture feedback, we had only 3 categories under this: structure-activity relationship, the nature and type of drug receptors, and the dose-response relations. As you can see, this is the exact structure of our wraparound textbook, Rouse textbook. So I have a scenario here with Kikai, who's an asthmatic patient who suddenly experiences difficulty in breathing. She uses her metered dose inhaler, let's say a salbutamol, and after a few minutes, her breathing improves. But after that, she feels hand tremors and palpitations. So why did the inhaler work so fast? But why did Kikai experience tremors? Is this an intended effect or a side effect? So to answer this, we need to understand pharmacodynamics, what the drug does to the body. So as you can see, pharmacodynamics do not only involve the beneficial effect but also the side effects. This is the common mistake in our previous quiz where you're asked a drug produces the desired bronchodilation but causes tachycardia. Which pharmacologic concept explains this dual effect? The correct answer here is pharmacodynamics. Bronchodilation is the desired effect. What causes tachycardia is the side effect, but still both is explaining us what the drug does to the body. So here's an activity that you need to submit in our group chat. So the first 3 students who will send to me the correct match of the role of the drug will have an additional 1 point for our quiz number 2. So you give me the drug or drugs and then the corresponding target and the effect of it. So you can pause this PowerPoint video or take a screenshot so that you can answer this activity. So going back to pharmacodynamics, again, what the drug does to the body. Paulit-ulit yon. But how do the drugs exert their effects in our body? So we have here, most of the drugs exert their effects by binding to protein targets. So we need to have proteins. So these proteins are our lock. And the drug here is the key. So question, which best explains pharmacodynamics? A, drug absorption, B, drug distribution, C, drug mechanism of action, D, drug excretion. You can pause this PowerPoint video so you can answer first. So the answer here is drug mechanism of action, or we call it MOA. MOA. Next item, a drug will not work unless it is protein bound. True or false? Okay, this is false. Not all drugs need receptors. Some drugs work just by physical or chemical action, not by binding to receptors. If we will go back to the previous slide, it just says that most not all. Most of the drugs needs receptors. So this is the lower percentage of that. So think of it like the receptors are the locks and the drugs are the keys. So the non-receptor drugs, on the other hand, are like sponges, magnets, or cleaners. So how do they work? For example, are osmotic diuretics. Osmotic diuretics, we have mannitol. And we use this as an IV fluid for cerebral edema or glaucoma. Pampaihi siya, pero it still looks like your dextrose-looking IV. Osmotic purgatives, on the other hand, these are laxatives, such as your magnesium sulfate, yung milk of magnesia natin, and Epsom salt. So, pinapainom ito kapag constipated or pang-cleansing. Another example for osmotic purgatives is your lactulose, yung Dufalac natin. So, again, still used for constipation. Purgatives, pang-purga nga. Antacids, ito mas kilala ninyo, your aluminum hydroxide or magnesium hydroxide. The very common brand names of this is the Maalox or your Kremil S. So, iniinom ito kapag humahapdi yung siyan. So, it works through neutralizing acid. So, parang chemistry. So, we are not working on receptors. Nag-neutralize lang siya ng acid sa katawan. Another is our heavy metal chelating agents. So, ito yung mga EDTA natin. Calcium disodium EDTA. This is used for lead poisoning. So, minamagnet niya lang, hinuhugot niya yung metal palabas ng katawan. We also have dimercaprol. Ang famous brand name nito is BAL or British Anti-Lewisite. This is given intramuscularly and used for heavy metal poisoning such as arsenic, mercury, and lead. So we have here another scenario, no? A patient still with asthma uses an inhaler and suddenly feels their heart racing. Another patient uses a different inhaler, still for asthma, and breathes easier but without palpitations, which is experienced by the first patient. So why did their bodies respond so differently? If both are dilators, bronchodilators, why is this second one safer for the heart? So in this structure-activity relationships, or our SAR, we'll see how the shape of a drug determines what it does in the body. So some students answered here, baka because of genetics. Okay, that is another topic. In this topic, we'll talk about why we'll have differences of these drugs when given to two different patients, even though both are bronchodilators. So, kanina dito sinabi natin, they used a different inhaler. The other one used a different inhaler. Same purpose, same drug class, but their bodies responded so differently. So, another activity for this one is spot the difference. You have this in your textbook, your isoproterenol and albuterol. So, given this figure, what parts of the molecules differ? Saan sila nagkakaiba? So, you'll see here, no? At this part and at this part, nagkaiba sila. So, they look almost the same, pero meron lang tayong slight changes. Both drugs are used for bronchodilation, but because of the small changes, our isoproterenol have the structure of a catecholamine, and our albuterol is a catecholamine analog. It's a saligenin. So pharmacokinetics for isoproterenol is 20 minutes. For albuterol, it's longer, 30 to 60 minutes, but the duration is also longer, which is 4 to 6 hours. For pharmacokinetics of isoproterenol, the duration is only up to 2 hours. And isoproterenol, you will see that there is an increased heart rate. Kung babalikan nyo yung picture kanina, ito yung sa lalaki. Ito yung tinake niya. A bronchodilator, it relaxes the airway, pero it causes increased heart rate. Ito naman yung dun sa babae, it still relaxes the airway, but there is little or no change in heart rate. So receptors and enzymes, these are the locks. The drug is the key. So a slightly different key may fit fewer locks. It's more selective and lasts longer, and it causes fewer side effects. So the more the selective the drug is, the more focused its effect and the fewer the side effects. So imagine the body has many locks. Marami siyang receptors. Receptor 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sa atin kasi, one key, one lock. It binds mainly to one receptor subtype. So, kung very selective yung drug, yung desired effect niya lang yung makukuha natin. But if it's not that selective, kaya niyang buksan ito, kaya niyang buksan yung second receptor, yung third receptor, yung fourth receptor, it is not selective. So, pwede siyang magkaroon ng ibang effects na hindi natin gusto sa katawan. So, kaya, mas gusto natin that our drug is selective. So, babalikan natin itong study natin with isoproterenol and albuterol. So, metabolism differs. Mas gusto natin si albuterol kasi mas matagal ang effect niya. So, mas madali kasing ma-metabolize si isoproterenol because its structure is a catecholamine. Minametabolize siya ng COMT or catechol o methyltransferase. So, yung COMT kasi is an enzyme that breaks down catecholamines. Hence, the metabolism is fast. Si albuterol, on the other hand, is not metabolized by COMT. So, it uses another way for it to be metabolized. So, we go back to metabolism ng ating pharmacokinetics. Ito yung sa phase 2, which uses sulfate conjugation. Hence, the result niya is longer duration of action, which is, we want that. So, why is the heart affected? Si isoproterenol kasi is not selective. So, it binds to both the beta-2 receptor, which is for the lungs. Ito naman talaga yung target natin. But it also binds to beta-1 receptors, which is the heart. And hence, meron siyang increased heart rate. For albuterol, it's more beta-2 selective, so it acts mainly in the lungs. Minimal yung action niya to no action sa ating heart. So, ang cue natin parati dito is yan. Pag B1 receptor, iisa lang yung heart mo. Okay, heart ang affected. Pag B2 receptor, lungs. Dalawa yung lobes ng lungs natin. Question, which structural feature explains the longer duration of albuterol? Answer is, bakit kaya mas matagal, longer yung duration ng albuterol compared kay isoproterenol? Okay, because it is resistant to COMT metabolism. So, if you've heard me kanina, it uses the sulfate conjugation for its metabolism. Now, we move to the second topic, which is the nature and types of drug action. So, I have here 3 figures that I got from your textbook. This is the lipid-soluble drugs and intracellular receptors, the drug-related ion channel, and the G protein-linked receptor. So, by just looking at it, which looks like the fastest sa kanila? Which seems slow but long-lasting? So, later, we will look into each of these types. We first talk about drug receptors. So we said receptors are proteins that bind drugs and convert a chemical signal into a cellular response through transmembrane signaling. Key characteristics of receptors, dapat specific, dapat selective yung response, and dapat sensitive. So, meron tayong ganitong receptor and magbabind lang yung ating drug in this receptor. Yung drug natin, magbabind lang sa receptor natin and then magpaproduce na siya ng biological response. So, drug receptors, we have molecules capable of serving as receptors. These could be receptors and you will be hearing a lot of these. So, wag maguguluhan. Bakit siya naging receptor? Bakit ito receptor? So, these are the molecules that can serve as receptors. Your enzymes, sabi natin sa biochem natin, enzymes are proteins. Of course, membrane proteins, glycoproteins, and lipoproteins that we see attached sa ating cell membrane. Nucleic acids can also be drug receptors and complex polysaccharides. So these are the common examples of classical receptors. You will be familiar to this siguro pag natapos na tayo sa pharmacology. But you will be hearing acetylcholine, mga nicotinic muscarinic receptors, adrenergic receptors, GABA, the dopamine, etc. So, receptors bind drugs and initiate events leading to an activity. So, this is a double-headed arrow. So, drug plus the receptor equals the drug receptor complex, which gives the biologic effect. And this drug receptor complex, itong formation na to is due to affinity and because of chemical bonds. So, it may be electrostatic, hydrogen, or your van der Waals forces. The successful binding of a drug requires an exact fit of the ligand atoms with the complementary receptor atoms. In your biochemistry, you've learned about these 2 models, the lock and key model and the induced fit model. And this fit of your drug and receptor is usually reversible. Usually, because sometimes it's not reversible anymore. Sinisira na niya yung mismong receptors. We have 4 types of transmembrane signaling mechanism. So now that we know that there are receptors and the drug binds to that receptor, what happens now? That's it. So one, it could be these soluble drugs attached to the receptors and there will be an intracellular receptor activation. Second, the drug can attach to the extracellular protein receptor. Third is the drug will attach to a receptor which is opening an ion channel. And the last one is the drug attaches to receptors linked to G proteins. So, apat lang yon. The one that is activates intracellular receptor, the one that attaches sa extracellular portion, the one that opens an ion channel, and the one that is linked to G proteins. So I always remember this by just imagining that I want to tell someone inside a locked house to do something. The first one here is papasok siya sa loob ng bahay at babaguhin niya yung rules. The second one is may doorbell lang. Press lang siya ng doorbell and mabubuksan na lahat. The third one is sisilip lang siya dun sa door and then parang stampede, parang may Black Saturday sale. Biglang papasok lahat ng mga tao. And the fourth one is tatawag ka ng ibang tao to do the work for you. This is the same for transmembrane signaling mechanisms, but this is the number 1 kanina. Yung intracellular receptor natin wherein pupunta ka sa loob ng bahay and mag-change ka ng rules. And then ito yung number 2 natin, the one that touches the doorbell lang and then magkakaroon na ng machine effect. And then yung third natin, the ligand-gated ion channel, sisilip lang tapos biglang magkakaroon ng stampede, maraming papasok sa bahay. And then the fourth one, meron kang messenger, may inutusan ka para pumasok sa loob ng bahay. For the first mechanism, which is for lipid-soluble drugs and intracellular receptor activation, the drug must be lipid-soluble. And magwa-walk straight siya, diretso siya sa ating cell membrane. Doon siya magbabind sa loob ng cell and it goes to the nucleus and changes gene transcription. This has the slowest onset kasi although diretso siyang pumasok sa ating cell membrane, kakailanganin niya pang mag-change ng gene transcription. But it's long-lasting kasi the new proteins, kahit na wala na yung drug, will remain even if wala na yung drug. So, examples of this are your corticosteroids, your thyroid hormone, and vitamin D. The next transmembrane mechanism is when the drug attaches to the extracellular portion of a protein receptor. So, meron tayong protein receptor dito and then it will attach itself doon. So, simply, it will bind sa portion na yon and then parang may switch tayo that an intracellular enzyme turns on. Tapos magkakaroon na tayo ng direct phosphorylation cascade inside. So magkakaroon na ng intracellular effect. Examples of these ones are insulin and PDGF. PDGF, your platelet-derived growth factor. The third one is the drug-regulated ion channels. So you still have the receptor. The drug binds to that surface receptor, but it will open a gate. So, ito yung gate na yung open niya, and then ions rush in, such as your sodium, potassium, and calcium. So, magkakaroon ng immediate electrical change. So, that's why it's the fastest among the four transmembrane mechanisms. Examples of these are acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that acts on nicotinic and muscarinic receptors. So, we have also nicotine. Kilala nyo naman si nicotine, which is a chemical that acts like acetylcholine. It opens sodium channels. So, that's why it causes addiction, no? Or increased heart rate or mataas na BP yung ating nicotine. We also have an example here, yung GABA natin. GABA are, drugs acting here are your benzodiazepines, mga alcohol natin, and anesthetic. GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. So, sila yung responsible for regulation of the flow of ions across cell membranes. Yeah. The last transmembrane mechanism, if you can remember, this is yung magtatawag ka ng ibang tao to do the work for you. There are only 4 important steps here. First is that the drug binds to the receptor. Yun naman lagi ang first step natin. But itong receptor for this mechanism is a 7 transmembrane. So makikita mo yan in the figure, ang haba ng kanyang receptor. This is where the drug will bind dito. Second, the receptor calls G protein. So, magtatawag siya ng G protein. This G protein, what you need to remember, meron siyang alpha, gamma, and beta. So, this is the G protein with alpha, gamma, and beta. So, the alpha of the G protein, will activate the effector enzyme. That's the third step. So, makikita nyo, may effector system doon. And this effector system makes the second messenger. And that's where the cell response already. Again, 4 steps. Drug binds to the receptor. Magtatawag siya ng G protein. Merong alpha yon, which activates the effector enzyme. Third. Fourth is that effector makes second messenger. And then the cell response. Examples, especially for respiratory therapy, are beta agonist, like your albuterol, which causes bronchodilation, your acetylcholine, which causes bronchoconstriction, your histamine, and your glucagon. Let's look at that in another illustration. So, we have here your receptor, which is a 7 transmembrane. Mag-a-attach yung inyong drug sa receptor na yon. And if you remember, magtatawag siya ng G protein. So, yung G protein is consisting of alpha, beta, and gamma. So, ayan, magtatawag siya ng receptor. And then, the alpha of that receptor will convert GTP to GDP. So, ang simply kanina ang sinabi, the G protein will call the effector system. Okay, so dito tayo magpapakita. Okay, tatawagin yung effector system na gagawa ng secondary messengers. Secondary messengers natin itong mga camp na to. And then, you will have already the cell response. After magawa niya yung work niya, babalik na naman sila dun sa kanilang resting state. We have several G proteins. If you will see here, we have specific G proteins for specific receptors. So, for example, yung ating beta-adrenergic amines. We have a particular G protein and it has a particular effector or signaling pathway. but the mechanism is the same. You have to activate an effector, and that effector will call on the secondary messengers. So we have here the effector and the corresponding secondary messenger. As a summary, we have four transmembrane signaling mechanism. The first one is for lipid-soluble drugs, the intracellular receptors. We say it's intra kasi sa loob ng cell yung receptor niya. Papasok siya, dire-diretso sa cell, and then andun yung receptor sa loob ng cell, and it will alter gene transcription. So, because it will still have to do transcription, this is the slowest. So, very long ang duration effect also nito. Kahit wala na yung drug natin, mag-e-effect pa rin since DNA yung binago mo. Next is the enzyme-linked receptors. Yung sa surface lang yung switch niya, and then there will be a cascade already of events. So, this is moderately fast. Next is the ion channel linked receptors. Ito yung may receptor, and then pag kumapit to yung drug, mag-o-open siya ng gate, and there will be an influx of ions such as sodium, potassium, and calcium. And this is the fastest. Lastly, we have the G protein coupled receptors. So this one is meron siyang second messenger to do the work. Question here, which receptor mechanism has the longest duration? You can pause this PowerPoint video again and take time to answer first. Okay, longest is the intracellular receptor. Why? Kasi nga papasok pa siya sa loob ng cell, and then andun yung receptor natin, and then it will still have to undergo transcription. Next question, which mechanism produces the fastest effect naman? Okay, fastest is the ion channel opening. Yun yung pagkakapit ng ating drug, mag-o-open siya ng gate, and then magkakaroon ng influx of the sodium, potassium, and calcium. Now we move to dose-response relationship. Who drinks coffee in the morning? So when you drink 1 cup of coffee, you feel awake. And if you drink 2 cups, you feel more alert. Parang kulang pa. You drink 5 cups, magkakaroon ka na ng palpitations. And what do you think you will feel if you drink 10 cups? Yan, magiging superhuman ka ba, sabi dito. So, does effect always increase forever? So, as you increase yung dose ba ng coffee natin, pataas ng pataas yung level of alertness natin. And, makakaramdam ba tayo ng mga side effects? So, the drugs behave exactly like coffee. This is what we call the dose response. So, the response to a drug is proportional to the drug concentration. So, meaning, the more drug you give, the stronger the effect. But this is up to a limit. May limit ito. So, dun tayo sa first na sinabi natin, proportional. So, the more drug, the more effect. At first, when you increase the drug concentration, more drug molecules are available. Meaning, if this is your receptor, nakikita nyo dyan, there are receptors. So, the more you increase the drug concentration, or the more drug available, more receptors are occupied. So, the effect increases. So, for example, you puff the inhaler once. So, there will be a slight breathing relief. You puff it twice, better yung relief. You puff it 3 times, even better. This is why the response, sabi, is proportional to drug concentration. But, there is a maximum effect. So, maximum effect niya, at some point, lahat ng receptors na to, itong mga receptors na to, are already occupied. That means kahit pa mag-add ka pa ng other drugs here, additional drugs, will not already increase the effect because occupied na lahat yung ating receptors. Example, if you already puffed 10 times yung salbutamol, it will not open the lungs more than the 2 to 3 proper puffs. Instead, magkakaroon ka na ng side effects, yung mga tremors, palpitation. And this top limit na sinasabi natin, this is already the maximal response or the maximal effect. So this relationship here is shown in a dose-response curve. On the graph, yung x-axis natin, this is the concentration or the dose. And the y-axis is the effect. So at first, the curve will rise steeply. So taas yan. But later on, it flattens. Magkakaroon ng plateau. Same as in this graph. Magkakaroon ng plateau. So it flattens because limited yung number of receptors natin. Once they are full, there's nowhere else for the drug to act. So parang sa jeep lang yan. Once all seats are full, more passengers can't sit anymore. So bakit dalawa yung graph natin dito, ma'am? Meron itong first one na parang straight line. Meron itong pangalawang graph na parang pa-S. So we always convert itong dose response natin into a logarithmic scale, itong sa second one, because the curve becomes S-shaped. Ano na kinalaman ng S-shape na yan? We call it the sigmoid. It's useful because yung middle part nitong sigmoid curve, makikita niyo yung dot doon, becomes a straight line. It makes it easier to compare drugs. So, because we are needing the ED50 or EC50, ano ba tong ED50 or EC50, ma'am? This is the dose or the concentration that produces 50% of the maximal effect, meaning the amount of drug needed to get half of the maximum effect. For example, if the maximum bronchodilation is 100%, the ED50, the dose natin, is the dose that gives 50% of lung opening. Potency versus maximal effect. You will always hear these terms throughout our pharmacology course. Potency is simply how much drug is needed to get 50% of the effect. So this is measured simply by your ED50 or EC50. For example, you have two pain relievers. Sa drug A natin, one tablet can already relieve 50% of the pain. But for drug B, naka 5 na tablets ka na, that's only the time that you felt relieved 50% from the pain. Therefore, si drug A is more potent because you need less of it. So, always remember, the lower the ED50, the higher the potency. Mas potent yung drug natin. In this figure, it shows us that drug B, si drug B natin, 5 milligrams yung kanyang ED50. Si drug A naman, ang kanyang ED50 ay 1 milligram. So, which is more potent? Si drug A ba o si drug B? So, again, we say here that drug A is 5 times more potent than drug B. Now we go to maximal effect. Maximal effect is the strongest possible effect. So, the strongest effect a drug can produce no matter how much more you give. For example, yung inhaler natin opens the airways only up to a certain point. So, more puffs after that, wala nang use. Sayang lang. Or just side effects. So, dito sa ating figure, again, drug A and drug B shows that this part here is already their maximal effect. Pareho sila ng maximal effect. So, wag nating i-confuse yung sarili natin. The potency, ito yung kalahati. The maximal effect is the maximum. Okay, there is always a confusion here, but let's fix it. Potency is how much drug is needed. And maximal effect is how strong is the best effect. So they are not the same. Balikan natin yung coffee example natin, no? So, if you drink, for example, espresso, maliit lang na cup, the strong effect with small amount, that means high potency. But if we drink the regular coffee, the large cup, for example, 3-in-1 itong coffee na to, you need more volume to experience the same effect as the espresso coffee. That means it has a lower potency. But both may wake you up equally. So, same ang maximal effect nitong mga to. The drugs can have same potency but different maximal effects also. Meaning, they need the same dose for 50% effect, but one drug can do better. Mas mataas yung effect niya kesa dun sa isa. Checkpoint, again. Which drug is more potent? Si drug A with ED50 of 10 milligrams or si drug B na may ED50 na 2 milligrams? Answer here is drug B with an ED50 of 2 milligrams because what it meant is we only need 2 milligrams to have 50% of the maximal effect. So, dito sa graph natin na to, which one is the most potent? Take a screenshot of this one, and the first one who will send sa GC natin with the correct answer will have again 1 point for their quiz number 2. Okay, now we move to therapeutic index. Therapeutic index is the ratio between the toxic dose and the effective dose. Or we say it's the ratio between the lethal dose, LD, and the effective dose, ED. In simple terms, this is telling us how safe the drug is. So, we usually abbreviate itong ating therapeutic index na TI. Big letter T, I. So, what do ED50 and LD50 mean here? So, this is an important clarification because it's not how we understood ED50 dun sa ating napag-aralan kanina. The ED50 that we've learned a while ago is the graded dose response. Sa ED50 dito, it's for the quantal. It's based on all or none response, not graded response. So, ED50 here means the dose where 50% of the subjects show benefit. 50% of the 100 na binigyan mo ng gamot nagkaroon ng benefit. And the LD50 here means that 50% of the subjects die. So, don't worry, ginamit naman nila dito are animal models. So, they use this to estimate toxicity. Again, this is based on quantal or the all or none responses, not the graded responses. So, simple analogy that we can have here is yung chili sauce. So, small amount of the chili sauce, tasty siya. Bigyan mo ng konti pa, it becomes very spicy. Bigyan mo na madami, will give you already stomach pain. So, if there is a wide gap between tasty and the harmful stomach pain, we say that the therapeutic index is wide and it is safe. So, sabi dito, wide therapeutic index, that's safe. Meaning, kung isang spoon that's still tasty and you need to have 100 spoons before ka magkaroon ng stomach pain, relatively, you have a wide therapeutic index and safe yung drug natin. But if it has a very small gap of between tasty and harmful, for example, 1 spoon again is tasty and 2 spoons lang it will give you already stomach pain. That means it has a narrow therapeutic index and it is very risky. That's why it will be needing close monitoring. So examples natin sa recipe, theophylline, which is we use for asthma or COPD. It has a very narrow therapeutic index. That means the therapeutic dose is very close to the toxic dose. Meaning, masobrahan ka lang ng konti, magkakaroon ka na ng nausea, arrhythmia, seizures. That's why the blood levels must be monitored when you are using theophylline. Another checkpoint question that you can get additional points for your quiz: which drug between drug A and drug B natin dito is safer? So, which drug is safer? Sa ating GC, you just put the question, which drug is safer, and then you give your answer. So, the first one who will watch this PowerPoint video, sila yung magkakaroon ng additional point. Now, we look at the difference between agonist versus antagonist. So, simply, when we say an agonist, it's a drug that binds to the receptor and magpaproduce ng effect. So, yung nakita natin D plus R, and then it will produce a DR complex and gives us an effect. So, ang ating full agonist, meron siyang affinity and efficacy. So, it's the lock and key model natin. So, it can open the door. For example, salbutamol opens beta-2 receptors and causes bronchodilation. Antagonist, on the other hand, it still has affinity. It can bind to the receptor natin, but it has no or zero efficacy, no activation. So, what does this mean? You have a fake key that fits, pero it doesn't open the door. So, what does it do? It blocks the other agonist or natural chemicals from binding. For example, propranolol natin, which blocks beta receptors. So, it prevents adrenaline effects. So, very simple lang kung paano nag-work yung antagonist natin. Nandun siya sa receptor natin, so no one or nothing can bind anymore. It cannot produce an effect. So, the agonist is simply blocked. Kung maaalala nyo yung ating DR, so D can still bind, meron pa ring affinity with the receptor, and it has a DR complex, magpaproduce pa rin siya ng DR complex, but it will not give an effect. No effect tayo dito. Zero efficacy. Comparing full agonist and partial agonist, there's a maximum possible effect. Just like epinephrine, salbutamol. So, laging meron tayong light switch fully on. Meron tayong partial, sabing partial natin, it binds the receptor but produces a smaller effect even at high dosage. So, yung light dito natin, hindi full, very dim lang. So, your partial agonist can also compete with full agonists, and they can reduce the effect of a full agonist. So in this figure, it shows us the difference between the partial agonist and the full agonist. So, full agonist, mataas yung maximal effect niya. Partial, bababa yung maximal effect niya. Now we go to drug interactions. So we have drug interactions. This happen when one drug changes the effect of another drug. Interaction nga between drugs. Drug-drug interaction. This can mean blocking, pwedeng blocking, adding, or boosting. So we have negative interactions, itong tatlong ito, chemical, functional, competitive, and we have a positive effects or drug interactions, additivity, synergism, and potentiation. So, chemical antagonism natin, very simple. So, chemical ito, ang work niya. So, the drugs directly react with each other and cancel one out. So, walang receptor involved
dito. For example, yung ating heavy metals plus chelating agents. So the chelator grabs the metal becomes inactive, and the metal is excreted. So that is the example for chemical antagonism. For functional antagonism naman natin, the function ang ina-antagonize. So two drugs have opposite effects on the same body system. For example, umiinom ka ng coffee pampapayat. Okay? And then, kumakain ka naman ng marami. So, two different things na ginagawa, pero yung effect nila is antagonizing each other. So, here we have already receptors. They act on different receptors. For example, methacholine for respi is causing bronchoconstriction. And you are also taking epinephrine, which is a beta-2 agonist, gives bronchodilation. So, the effects, isa for bronchoconstriction, isa for bronchodilation. The effects cancel each other out. Ito, kaiba naman siya ng ating competitive antagonism. From the name itself, competitive, they compete for the same receptor. So, the antagonist binds to the receptor, walang effect, just binablock niya lang si agonist from binding. For example, histamine, which causes allergy symptoms, parang ngayon, kaya ngongo ako, no? In-allergy ako. And we have fexofenadine, which is a histamine 1 blocker. H1 blocker. It blocks histamine. So, si hexafenadine, if mag-take ako ngayon yan, it will block the histamine. The histamine can no longer cause me these allergy symptoms. Sa ating positive drug interactions, we have additivity. So, 1 plus 1 equals 2 lang to. Same receptor or same effect. For example, nag-take ka ng isang paracetamol, nag-take ka pa ng ibuprofen. So, paracetamol plus ibuprofen for pain. So, the sum of both effects, mas okay yung pain relief na ibibigay sa inyo. It's 1 plus 1 equals 2. For synergism naman, you still add the two together, but greater yung expected. It's more than 2 yung iyong mafe-feel na effect na to. So, it has different mechanisms. For example, you have antibiotic A plus antibiotic B. And the result could be much stronger effect than either of the drugs given. So, it's 1 plus 1 equals 3, or what we say here is 1 plus 1, it's greater than 2. And lastly, potentiation. When we say potentiation, it's may potential is potentiates. One drug here, wala siyang effect, but it boosts another drug. So, it's 1 plus 0 equals 2 or more than 2. So, for example, natin dito is amoxiclav. If you've heard that, co-amoxiclav. So, amoxicillin, which has an antibiotic action when given with a clavulanic acid, which has no antibacterial effect, gives better results. So, parang lang to may speaker plus amplifier. So, amplifier, wala naman siyang nilalabas, the sound, but it amplifies what the speaker gives. That's potentiation. Here are other examples of our negative interactions. So, sa chemical, again, it's neutralization, chelation of metals. Sa functional, it's a tug of war. So, ito, effect niya is constriction, and the other is dilation. And the last one is competitive. Your histamine versus fexofenadine. Competitive meaning something blocks something. And this is for our positive interactions, additivity. So, 1 plus 1 equals 2. For synergism, 1 plus 1 is greater than 2. And potentiation is 0 plus 1 is greater than 1. Now we'll look into these common types of individual drug responses. When we say idiosyncratic, it is an unusual or unexpected reaction that most people do not have. So the drug may cause the opposite effect or may cause no effect at all. It cannot be predicted. For example, a sedative makes most people sleepy. But one patient, no, binigyan siya ng sedative, becomes hyper or restless. That's idiosyncratic. So, pag naalala ko itong idiosyncratic, parang siya yung naiiba. Kakaiba yung effect. Next is hypersensitivity. It means an allergic reaction to a drug. This is actually immune-related and can be dangerous. So, for example, penicillin causes rash or itchy. In severe cases, it causes anaphylaxis, may difficulty na of breathing. This is serious because it may require airway support or ventilation. So again, when we hear hypersensitivity, hyper yung katawan natin doon. It's an allergic reaction. Next term is tolerance. The drug becomes less effective, decreased in effect over time, so higher doses are needed. So it happens with repeated use. If you can still remember my example for the coffee. So sa first coffee, very alert siya. So if everyday siya nagko-coffee, parang lesser na yung effect. Parang kailangan ko ng mas maraming coffee or different type of coffee for the same alertness that I've been experiencing before. So drug examples here, yung opioids natin, mga sedatives, and with chronic overuse also of our bronchodilators. So again, for tolerance, that's gradual decrease of the effect. And lastly, tachyphylaxis. This is a very fast loss of drug effect. So rapid decrease in effect. It happens quickly, sometimes after only a few doses. So for example, repeated use of nasal decongestant spray. First use, it works. After frequent use, wala nang relief. Hindi na siya nag-work. So it's different from tolerance because tolerance is slow yung kanyang decrease in effect. While for tachyphylaxis is fast. So memory cue natin dito, tachy, parang tachycardia, fast. Fast yung decrease sa effect natin. Now we go to the very last part of this module, which is on pharmacogenetics. So G ang naka-highlight dyan because we are talking about genes. It refers to the hereditary differences in the way the body handles specific drugs because people respond differently to drugs because of their genes. So in short, same drug, same dose, magkaibang reaction. And this can be explained by genetic differences. And we don't notice this right away because problems by themselves are hidden. So the difference appears only when the person takes a drug and you don't know, for example, that you're lactose intolerant until you drink milk. So how do genes affect drug response? Bakit ba tayo nagkakaroon ng ibang response because of the genes? Because of, napag-aralan natin ito sa pharmacokinetics, drug metabolism. How fast the drug is broken down depends on genes. So some are fast metabolizers, some are slow metabolizers. It could be also drug targets, just like ano bang target ng drug natin? Receptors, enzymes, channels. So most studies focus only on metabolism, but the targets matter too. So for example, sa book natin ito galing, isoniazid. So what happens? Some people break it down slowly, some break it down quickly. So the effects, meron tayong mga slow inactivators wherein the drug stays longer sa katawan natin. And it will therefore increase side effects. Meron namang rapid inactivators or rapid metabolizers. The drug, dahil metabolize ito fast, is removed fast sa katawan natin. Therefore, the effect of the isoniazid is lower. And if you still can remember our slide on pharmacokinetics, it's shown there that many Asians are actually rapid inactivators. Mabilis ang metabolism, meaning mas mababa yung effect. Next, drug example natin dito is succinylcholine. Succinylcholine, what normally happens is it causes short muscle paralysis. So, the patient breathes again in minutes. Mabilis dapat siya. But in some people, the enzyme that breaks it down is not normal. So, the drug lasts hours instead of minutes. So, instead na short lang yung muscle paralysis that succinylcholine gives, nagiging prolonged yung paralysis niya. And if that happens, the patient cannot breathe on their own. So, kailangan niya ng mechanical ventilator until recovery. And last example natin is isoflurane. This is an anesthesia. So, ang nangyayari dito, for those who have genetic issues, may abnormal calcium channel in muscle cells. So, the result is rapid rise in temperature, malignant hyperthermia, increased oxygen use, and this can be very fatal. The drug is safe for most people, but in others, deadly siya. And here is the link to the PowerPoint of this lecture feedback. Feel free to print it for your review, because after this is quiz number 2 for module 2.